first of all, before we get into Stephen Tripp, some of the news headlines from around Australia in the rural area. 2 Victorian farmers have been fined and banned from owning farm animals for 3 years after they were found guilty of cattle and sheep neglect. They should not be farmers at all, because generally farmers do care for the environment and do care for their animals. April rainfall fell short across large areas of key farming country, leaving many districts below their long-term average, and growers are now looking to early May falls to make up the deficit, as if they haven't got enough of the plate. Now they've got to worry about the weather, which they have always worried about since time began. Less than 5% of West Australian producers have received support to transition their businesses away from the live sheep export trade. And farmers are turning to pulse crops as soaring fertiliser costs hit budgets. Don't forget to subscribe to the Country Telegraph on YouTube and Rumble, or follow us on Facebook or X.
A recent report from the Centre of Independent Studies warns us that this government's renewable energy rollout could become one of the biggest financial disasters ever, with transmission costs alone blowing out from an estimated $8.5 billion to more than $120 billion. Have you seen the blowouts from the Central West Arana Res, from the $650 million to $5.3 billion for the transmission project, and they have only just begun construction. While regional communities like Walker host the infrastructure and carry the impact, this is going to cost us all in our energy bills and more. This is why we want transparency on projects. We want to make sure that Premier Minns, Minister Sharp and Minister Mookie are accountable, and that this transmission project from Bayswater to Walker in its current plan is an absolute nightmare waiting to happen.
The Snowy 2.0 pumped hydro project will see massive cost blowouts, with current expert estimates now reaching around about $42 billion, 21 times the original $2 billion forecast from 2017. Now, this escalation to be met by Australian taxpayers is attributed to a combination of construction delays, engineering failures, and previously ignored financial factors. Now, this is outrageous. And what are the touted benefits of this scheme? Can Australia do more with this massive amount of money? Now, wait for this. The PR says Snowy 2.0 is a major Australian pumped hydro expansion project linking the Tantangara and the Talbingo reservoirs through 27 k's of tunnels to increase the existing Snowy scheme's generation capacity by 2,000 megawatts and provide 300,000 megawatt hours of large-scale energy storage. Now, I think some of this is misleading. We'll talk to one of our guests about this. He knows just about everything. Stephen Tripp is president of the Australians for Better Government and vice president of Let's Rethink Renewables and host of the world-renowned Commanding the Narrative podcast. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
G'day, Mike. Nice to see you again, and hello to your audience.
You look very debonair. You always look debonair.
Try to look my best when I come on your show, mate. I have to keep up with you.
Nothing but the best. Tell me your thoughts on this debacle.
Where do you start? We are in a big mess in this country because we have politicians going ahead with these sorts of projects, and to think that it was only going to cost $2 billion back in the day was laughable, because it's untested. This has not been tried anywhere in the world, and it's a big engineering feat. I mean, I'm sure the engineers and the designers and the people working on this project have learned a lot and have got a lot of expertise and experience from working on this project. But what we're trying to do hasn't been done anywhere in the world. We're trying to build basically a massive battery out in the Snowy Hydro region, and we always talk about the greatness of the Snowy Hydro, the original Snowy Hydro. This is a completely separate concept. Snowy Hydro, the original one, was traditional hydro, where you've got water just naturally flowing down and into a hydro system and producing power. This is just a battery where we are pumping water up the mountain and then dropping it down later. So it's really no surprise that the costs have blown out, but the fact that the costs have blown out this much is a disaster.
It is a disaster, and I'm just thinking though. Let me just go back a bit. I was just going through my some of my notes. Now, who was that great? He's a prime minister. Wait. He was great. He was a true blue Labor politician masquerading as a conservative. Now, what's his name? Hang on. Wait. That's right. Malcolm Turnbull. It was his idea, wasn't it? Did he do a Kevin Rudd trick? Instead of having a napkin to write, let's have the NBN, it will never work. He decided to have Snowy River 2.0. Did he write that on the back of a wine bottle?
Look, this is a big problem that we've got. We elect these politicians and they have no expertise in the areas that they're now running. And look, he was Prime Minister at the time, but I'm sure he's got a Minister for Climate Change and Energy or whatever it was at the time, with their department behind them, a whole bunch of bureaucrats. And the bureaucrats would have come to the Prime Minister and the Minister and presented this idea. And the Minister and Malcolm Turnbull would have no idea about the complexity of building a project like the Snowy Hydro 2. It sounds great on paper. I'm sure they presented Malcolm Turnbull with a nice glossy brochure and a nice video package about how great this would be. He would be a nation building prime minister. They'd be erecting statues in the Snowy region about how great this project was and how great he was as prime minister. And look, I mean, without any background knowledge on or adequate questions on on what to ask, I mean, if they're presenting to him that this is going to cost $2 billion, you'd think that you would scratch your head and go, that doesn't make sense. But what does he know? I mean, he was in business before this. You would think that he would ask questions more than the other people in Parliament that are just from the union movement or political staffers. But these politicians are not equipped to make these big decisions. So he probably got suckered into this. And now we've got this big white elephant sitting out there in the Snowy region, and they're predicting that it's going to cost $42 billion. Well, that price tag keeps going up and up and up. Who knows what the ultimate cost is going to be? This project is not even complete. Apparently, it's 60 to 70% complete. So we've still got a way to go. And then once it's operational, I'm sure there's maintenance that's involved. There's the transmission line maintenance that's involved. There's going to be costs coming on top of it into the future as well. So look, we're in a lot of pain from this one project.
We are indeed. It says here, let me find where it says. That's right. It will provide a week of spare power for how many homes? It's the varying figures that they're somewhere between 500,000 homes and 3 million homes. So they could quite possibly be out by 2.5 million homes. Tell me, what are the real figures? What good will it do?
There's no real figures, and there's no real figures because this is intermittent energy. So basically the Snowy Hydro 2 is a massive battery, and they need that battery because they're relying on wind and solar to produce power, and that's intermittent. So the sun's only out at certain times of the day and the wind is only blowing at certain times of the day. So they have to overbuild the system to accommodate for times when they don't have any sun, if there's wet weather and there's clouds for a week, or sometimes we have wind drought. So there's times when we have extended days where there's no wind at all. So they have to overbuild the system. So when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, there's an abundance of power in the system, but there's too much power. So that excess power has to be stored somewhere. So they need batteries, but they don't have the battery technology yet. So they're trying to use this Snowy Hydro system where when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, it gets pumped to the Snowy Hydro. They pump the water up the mountain, and then it gets fed back down when they need it. So that's the whole idea of this battery system. So the whole renewable rollout, the whole wind and the renewable energy zones in the central west of Rana and right around the country, the solar projects, the wind projects, they all rely on battery systems like the Snowy Hydro 2. So they have to forge ahead with this project. They can't go and just go, oh, look, we made a mistake, we've got to cancel this. This whole project is relied upon by the whole net zero madness. So if they were to turn around and say, look, we got it wrong, we're going to cancel the Snowy Hydro 2, then they would have to cancel the whole wind and solar rollout. So look, we should be sticking to coal, in my opinion.
Of course we should be, but we're not, because we have we have Labor Light, which is the Conservatives, and then we have Labor itself with Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese and the other band of merrymen. I mean, I even saw the government saying about, this is just a topic, about the immigration, that the immigrants do not have to, the new immigrants do not have to integrate. Anyway, it's another story. We won't go there because we will be distracted. But truly, that is a disgrace. That is a true disgrace. Come into our house, but do what you bloody well like. And you can trash it, which they are. Anyway, another story, and I will leave that one alone right now. What about the environment? Because we see, and again, the Conservatives are no better than Labor. But look what they're doing to save the planet with the Great Dividing Range and those wind turbines, as Donald Trump says, windmills, destroying the environment to save it. Let's talk about the environmental damage that this will do.
Look, they don't care. If you're going to build a footpath down Sydney and you have to rip out a tree, like it's all hell breaks loose. You have to get so many permits and so many authorizations just to pull down this one little tree. And if there's a little insect in there that you might kill, then they can it. But when it comes to wind and solar, when it comes to high voltage transmission lines, and when it comes to the snowy hydro too, it's just like send the bulldozers in, clear as much land as you want, and we just need to push these projects through. And we have plenty of examples where the bulldozers have gone through and they've wiped out natural habitats for endangered species. I mean, there's you can read some of the documents of some of these companies where if they were to find an injured koala on the ground, they have to put it out of its misery with a blunt object. So there's been examples already about environmental destruction that's come at the cost of these projects. But where are the Greens? Where are the environmentalists? I mean, there is a good environmentalist, Stephen Nowakowski, up in far north Queensland. He's done a lot of work. He's an old school environmentalist. I'm sure you've interviewed him at some point.
A dozen times.
Yeah. So that he's an example of a good old school environmentalist. But where are the rest of them? If the Greens supposedly love the environment.
Now, the Greens are at the stock exchange, in the bank, or at some rich club. They're no longer the Greens, it's just like the Teals.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, they're one to create some sort of chaos. And secondly, they've got no interest in the environment.
No.
I mean, if you're in the States, the only green they would be related to is to the colour of money.
Well, look at the Teals. I mean, look at how much money is put into the Teals by renewable investors, and it's just an investment for them. They put $2 million into Allegra Spender's campaign, or they put $2 million into Kylie Ting's campaign, or Monique Ryan, or whoever it might be, and those people get elected. It's $2 million. They end up making billions of dollars out of government subsidies. A lot of these projects, when they fall over, these companies don't have to pay the subsidies back. So this is a massive Ponzi scheme that's happening at the expense of the Australian taxpayer, and we don't get told about it because it is very complex to explain. It's not easy to go into the machinations of how all this renewable stuff works and how it's not going to work. People just see the nice images about how we're saving the world with these wonderful turbines and solar panels that just magically grow out of the ground. They don't talk about how they're constructed, and well, Channel 7 did talk about it recently on Spotlight, where they talked about the cobalt mining that happens in Africa, and the slave labor that happens with the child labor with the cobalt, and also with the Uyghur population in China. They don't talk about that, but that's the reality of renewables. That's the true cost of renewables. And there are big questions, environmental questions, slave labor questions, and the fact that this stuff is expensive and is not going to work, it's getting pushed through because everyone's making money out of it except the everyday Australian.
Yeah, we were talking with TNT Radio, and we were talking about how the EVs and how the renewables, or how they swing towards non-petrol or diesel alternatives, how it was bringing back this old industry that we all thought had gone away. People were like, what was that? And said slavery, and it has. It's brought back slavery, and then you look at the how much these really do save. The EV is going to save the planet. No, it's not going to save the planet. For the first 8 years, to build that particular vehicle has cost more than the damage done by the I suppose petrol, diesel run cars. So they are actually more damaging absolutely more damaging to the environment than the normal combustion engine. And then think about it, 7 years down the track, you want to sell your car, and you can sell your car, but you have to tell the buyer that they need to pay $40,000 for a new battery. And then that destroys the environment again, because what do they do with that old battery? And the
Well,
one they just put in, what did it do to the environment? So it's a furphy, isn't it, that the renewables are going to save the planet, that these new EVs, and everyone's running out to get the EVs. Chango, it don't work. But they are running out to all these alternatives pushed by governments who should know better. It just says a lot about our modern day project management when the management of the renewables, the management of these the Snowy River Scheme 2.0, all these. What's wrong with us? Why can't we get it right?
because we have politicians that have got lobbyists just swirling all around them. And you mentioned the electric cars. I mean, look, now they're building the batteries into the chassis. So once that battery dies, you have to throw the whole car out and start again. There's incredible cost when it comes to building renewables, whether it's wind and solar or batteries, the cobalt that goes into it, the lithium, the copper, all that stuff has to get mined. It's getting mined largely either in China or third world countries. Just think about the diesel generators they're using for their mining operations. They're using coal to power those mining operations. Where's the carbon footprint from all of that? That doesn't go into consideration. But these politicians, they're just answering to the lobbyists, and those lobbyists are being paid by big renewables investors. There's a lot of money to be going into it, and the hypocrisy of the politicians that are pushing this stuff. Like, for example, the Teals. I got an email from a constituent in Warringah, because I formerly ran in Warringah for the One Nation Party, and I had done a tour out to the central West Orana, which I spoke to you about previously, where we saw the renewable projects up close, and I made a mini documentary out of that. A constituent sent that to Zali Steggall's office, and they came back and said, well, you have to be very careful about that Stephen Tripp character, because he was a former One Nation candidate, and One Nation get funded by the coal industry. Well, I've been involved with Let's Rethink Renewables and the National Rational Energy Network trying to push back against this renewables rollout. We always get tagged that we're getting money from coal and coal investors. Hey, I would love to get money from coal. I haven't seen a cent from any fossil fuel companies at all, because we're fighting their battle. We're trying to push back against this renewable stuff, and we don't get any support from them. But people like Zali Steggall and her office are smearing people like myself with that claim, when they're the ones that take all the money from renewable investments for their campaign, and all that stuff's disclosed. You can go on the AEC website and see all the donations that they've taken from Climate 200 and other groups that are very similar. They're the ones that I guess are putting that narcissistic twist on it, where they try and project what they're doing onto someone else. But look, mate, if the coal industry was so powerful and the fossil fuel industry was so powerful, well, then they wouldn't be blowing up coal plants and getting rid of coal. The coal would be surging ahead. No, what really is surging ahead is renewable energy, wind and solar, and it's surging ahead because there's so much money behind it. People are so invested in it, and they're hiring lobbyists that are going down to Canberra or Macquarie Street or any state parliament around the country, and they're just swirling around these politicians, telling them how great it is, telling them how they're going to be a hero for bringing in this energy transition in. And as I keep saying, it's the Australian people that are paying the cost, because this stuff is not working. It's costing a bomb, and it is bringing a lot of environmental destruction and destruction of our communities, destruction of our rural landscapes, destruction of our productive farmland. A lot of these Teals think this stuff's getting built out of the desert. Well, go out to Dubbo, go out to Dunedoo, go out to Coolah. I've seen Wellington solar projects. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not sitting on desert. It's sitting on prime agricultural land.
Yeah, maybe you could just give Jacinta Allen and even probably Jess Wilson a bit of a tingle. I don't mean to tingle, I mean a call. That would be, although they may enjoy the latter. But I would give them a call just to say, don't destroy the farms, because they're destroying the farms in Victoria. Snowy 2.0, it does need to be abolished or abandoned, not abolished, abandoned. Unfortunately, there's a cost. There's a cost moving forward. I would dare say that the cost to stop is much cheaper than the cost moving forward. How do we do that?
Look, it's not unprecedented. When John Bradfield built the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the next stage of that project was to build railway tunnels to the northern beaches and then to the eastern suburbs. Now, to think how much benefit that would have brought the city of Sydney. I mean, to have a underground rail line to the northern beaches and the eastern suburbs would have solved a lot of our problems. But that project was stopped because the Great Depression came. And there's abandoned tunnels in the city. If you go into the city circle stations, there's abandoned platforms, there's abandoned tunnels, because they began building that project, the Great Depression happened, and they had to abandon it. So why can't we abandon the Snowy Hydro too if the costs have blown out this much? And it goes back to what I said before. The whole renewable rollout, the whole mad rush to net zero relies on this battery technology. And if you were to abolish the Snowy Hydro 2 and say, look, it's just blown out, the costs are too much, and we're going to abandon this project, despite the costs that, there would be costs involved in closing it down, then you would have to stop the rollout of other wind and solar projects, because they become redundant, because where are you going to store the excess energy? And what happens when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining? You will have blackouts. So they can't stop this project. The whole transition to net zero relies on projects like the Snowy Hydro 2. So they have to forge ahead despite the fact that the costs are blowing out, despite the fact that it may not even work efficiently. And one of the other things as well, when they're pumping the water up the hill, they lose 30% of the energy that's produced from wind and solar. So it's completely ineffective. And then they lose 10% of energy in the transmission lines, because they have to get it back to the grid in Sydney or Melbourne or wherever else it's got to go. So, mate, this is a big disaster. But their whole transition to net zero relies on this stuff. So they're going to forge ahead no matter what. And there's no accountability, and there's no accountability mechanism for the Australian people to stand up and say, stop, stop. And that's our biggest problem.
Pauline, I think her first question would be, could you imagine? I can't do that. I can't imagine. I like Pauline, like the party, and a lot of the people in it. But Prime Minister Pauline Hanson, I can't do it. But anyway, just imagine though, Pauline, her first question in Parliament would be, please explain.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a whole year wasted, because we'd be hearing the explanations on what too much alcohol does to you, makes you make bad decisions. Yeah. Sorry, now, if somebody wants to find out more about you, Stephen, how do they do that?
They can head to commandingthenarrative.com. That's the best place to go. I am involved in a whole host of different groups, but that's all. That's the central hub. Head to commandingthenarrative.com. And I do want to give a quick plug. If you're on the Central Coast or Cessnock this weekend, the 2nd of May, we're going to be on the Central Coast, Australians for Better Government. You're going to be hosting We the People. It's an event talking about our system of government and how to reform our system of government and come up with solutions on how we can make this system better. And the very next day, May 3rd, on the Sunday, we're going to be at the East Cessnock Bowling Club. So please come along. We want to see you there. Please contribute to the conversation, and it should be some good events. So that's for Australians for Better Government.
I'll just get on the phone. I'm going to call the publican to hide the key to the...
I don't drink, mate. It won't be me, but I don't know about somebody else.
Don't you?
No, I don't.
Whoa, you got to... My mum, bless her soul, always said the difference between those that don't drink, and David Richards is listening, he'll comment on this, I'm sure. My mum always said those that don't drink and smoke, the difference between those, let's get this right, those that don't drink, it's a ridiculous thing, by the way, those that don't drink and smoke, the only difference is when they die is that they die healthy.
Yeah, well, mate, I don't even drink coffee, so it's all about the sacred temple.
Oh, my lordy lord. I live on it. It's in my veins. And again, David Richards would told me off for that too. I did win a bet with him that Scotch is much better for you than wine. Now, I won that because I wouldn't listen to his answer. So anyway.
Well, my grandmother lived to 102, and she said that I think it was whiskey and cigarettes got her there, or something along those lines. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know. We'll find out.
No, your grandmother did something unique, and David's also a professor. He'd love to study the remnants of your grandmother. Have a great weekend. Good luck over the weekend too, by the way. Always a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm not being stupid. The Commanding the Narrative podcast is very, very good. And it does create some raised eyebrows, and it does make you think, and that's what it's all about. Stephen Tripp, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph. And this is the Country Telegraph, reminding you very shortly we'll have the Bureau of Meteorology's weekend weather forecast. I know it's going to rain here tomorrow because I mentioned barbecue to my wife, and might wash the car and cut the lawn. It's going to pelt down. You watch. Hang on. The wind is blowing. Now, whether all the city folk realise it or not, Australia is facing very hard times in the not too distant future. At the moment, we're able to fill up and at a great cost feed the family and our animals in the country. The poo is already hitting the fan, and unfortunately, city and country alike will face hardship as a result of the stand off in the Strait of Hormuz. And you look at Donald Trump, it might go on for a few years. So many products that rely on petroleum and other essential inputs will be in short supply, delayed, or only available at a much higher cost. For example, pharmaceutical supply chains are at risk, especially for cold chain products like vaccines, cancer therapies and insulin. High volume generics, antibiotics and raw materials derived from petrochemicals, shock horror, are expected to face shortages. Now, while there is a national medicine stockpile, Australia imports about 90% of its medications, leaving the country very vulnerable. Dr. David Richards is an Australian physician, scientist, systems theorist whose career bridges medicines, mathematics, and the study of complex adaptive systems. David is also a co-founder of Australians for Science and Freedom and a general practitioner, and a very good one indeed, let me tell you that, and adjunct professor at an Australian university in the Faculty of Medicine. Dr. David Richards, greetings and salutations, sir.
Thank you, Mike. A wonderful introduction. That's very kind of you.
Well, I had to lie. I mean, I didn't have to dig very deep. I found all these magnificent things about you.
You missed out a drinking buddy. That was the one thing.
No, I would have spent too much time with it. Then I would have been in trouble, But and you are right. Wine. I was saying before that we had a little bet. You did win. Wine is much better for you, but I have trouble drinking that at breakfast. Hey, tell me about we maintain this. It's called a National Medicine Stockpile, NMS, of essential medicines, vaccines, antidotes and personal protective equipment, PPE, for national health emergencies. But we don't know much about this reserve. Can you tell us about this reserve? And even during COVID, was it necessary?
Well, it's difficult to know. I mean, there's not a lot of data on it. I mean, a lot of this stuff is kept quiet, and government doesn't release information. And during COVID, in particular during COVID, very little information came out. Look, sometimes it's poorly targeted. It's often these things, in my experience, often these things are influenced by drug companies. I think back to one of the flu epidemics we had. I think it was the swine flu epidemic. It was 2012, I think, or 2011. And at that stage, we had this promise of a massive surge in influenza cases, and the government stockpiled Tamiflu, huge amounts of Tamiflu, and in the event, it was almost impossible to get Tamiflu because it was so carefully guarded. To apply to get the release of the Tamiflu, you had to go through a series of bureaucratic steps, so that by the time the Tamiflu was available, the patient had either recovered or died. It was ridiculous. Long and the short of it is that most of that Tamiflu never got used, and so the government had this huge stockpile of Tamiflu that was useless to Australia. And how did they resolve the problem? Well, what they did, they extended the expiry date, and then they resold it back to the pharmaceutical companies, back to the pharmacies, I should say, with the extended life duration of the product, so that it could be reused. And interestingly, the agency, or the company that spruiked this massive flu outbreak back in 2000, 2012, whenever it was. The CEO of that company was none other than our lovely Donald Rumsfeld. And so, so these commercial influences, influence in government policies, very much like Stephen Tripp was saying, that these people in power have got very little real inside knowledge. And so what the big problem with these stockpiles is that very often they're poorly targeted, and they come under the influence of commercial pressures from pharmaceutical companies and so forth. And so, but we can't really be sure exactly what government is being held, because it's just not made available.
Which are the basic medicines that are at risk because of the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's interesting, Mike, because the primary concern will be IV fluids and consumables, so plastics and so forth. And I wonder why, because you would have thought Australia was completely capable of producing its own supply of IV fluids, but apparently not. Apparently its report is so. Antibiotics, insulin will be diabetics are one group that are going to be a little bit vulnerable if the insulin anti-diabetic products aren't made available. Anesthetic agents and hospital stock generally is going to be particularly put under pressure.
Yeah, it's. I have to say I'm quite disturbed with all this. In another program, we do talk about these sorts of things, but it is quite shocking at the moment to see what's happening, and even the packaging. They're now starting to worry about packaging in certain clothing materials, because they also contain petroleum, and without that getting through the strait, with Donald Trump saying it could go on for years, we do have some hiccups to face down the track. The people in rural areas, regional, rural and outback areas, are doing it tough. They're doing it tough because of the current situation in the Middle East, but also with the impending, not doom and gloom, or doom or gloom, but it's going to create some headaches for people down the track. What do you suggest they do when it comes to general health? And I played a clip before, a couple of clips on a rural and outback medicine, with the Flying Doctor Service and the government doing something in, I think, New South Wales. How does the community, because doctors are hard to get, and if this continues, it'll even put in jeopardy delivering the medicines to various locales. The Flying Doctor Service, it relies on fuel. What happens to that? So what should besides probably drinking less frothy wine, which is called beer, eating a little better, but you start disrupting, and I'm being stupid here, you start disrupting the day-to-day operations. People get up early, work very hard, enjoy a bit of life, but they work very, very hard. If they get sick, though, they're sort of, they may at the end of the day, because it's tough now, but they may be quite stuffed.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the key is to start preparing now in the rural areas and start stockpiling products, particularly the IV fluids and so forth. This comes down to supply chains, and recognizing that this is a situation that could well get worse. My own estimation is that there's a 50% chance that this is going to lead to significant disruption over the next 3 to 6 months, and maybe longer. And so, while things are still operational at this point in time, this is when we need to be acting to stockpile these things, to create regional medicine depots, expand the telehealth and rural nursing services, and stockpile consumables in the hospitals, because that's where things are going to be felt most acutely. For the average person, what's really important for them is to maintain their pattern of life. It's very difficult. When you're under stress, your normal routine suffers. You struggle to do the basic stuff because it becomes deflating. You don't have the inclination to do these things. And this is where your routines, your regular routines, you walk in, making sure you take care of your meals and get out and enjoy sunshine as well. Good weather, good fresh air. All of these, keeping those routines going is really critical for mental health during these downtimes. Having local support networks where you've got communities that support, individuals and communities that support each other. I've gone through some difficult times myself over the last few years, and I found that the support of my local groups, cycle, running, and so forth, that was tremendous for me to help me get through some of the difficult things that I was getting through. So those are the things, embedding these networks locally and being involved. Communication is really important, and keep up your routines. That's really important as well.
Yeah, it is indeed. And try and keep healthy and fit, but at the same time, enjoy life. But I mean, I can see if you're hundreds of Ks from anyone, even 50 Ks from anyone, and something happens, you want to make sure that you're going to be looked after. And it's and again, the bush feeds Australia, and it certainly gets the bum steer when it comes to modern cons that the rest of the country has in most places. Dr. David Richards, somebody wants to find out more about you. How do they do that?
Well, I'm the chairman of the Australians for Science and Freedom. Our website is asf.org. Look, we're always encouraging new people to be recruited to our organisation. Look us up, and we welcome you with open arms.
And David will shout to a drink. Maybe not. Dr. David Richards, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure. That's it, by the way. In the background, there's a lot of concern about the Victorian government. And will the opposition, will the Conservatives do much different? Who knows? But at the moment, the bully boys, on behalf of the Victorian government, are trying to get onto farmers' lands, survey it, and then implement these great towers and take over it, because we can do what we like. So Stop the Towers is right behind us. They all need your help. And I think this next piece of video, take note of it, show your support, because they do feel a bit alone, but they're getting quite buoyed as the days go on. But we need to show these brave and these normal Australians doing a great job for our country. We need to show them a bit of love and a lot of respect. Have a great weekend. Go Satyrs. Catch you on Monday.